Welcome to those of you who have just arrived. This is the Rewiring Workplaces webinar, Courage to Pause. We'll be starting at the top of the hour, which is in about 2 minutes. Thanks for being here. Welcome everyone to the Courage to Pause. This is a webinar today that's sponsored by Shook and it is one of our series in rewiring workplaces. I appreciate all of you being here and being here spot on time, and some of you even a bit early. So thanks for that. And we know that some more people will be coming in as we go. And I just wanted to say a couple introductory words. I'm Lori Shook from Shook Svensson, and to introduce Shook Svensson, we are a consultancy, small consultancy focusing on culture development in organizations by providing leadership development, team coaching, executive coaching, and hybrid training programs. All of our work is based on neuroscience. That's the rewiring bit that we talk about, because we think we're rewiring brains. And the reason we use neuroscience is that it's a very practical, pragmatic choice, sort of easy access to understanding emotions in the brain and what's going on in stress and how to manage it and so on. And we just use that approach to help leaders and teams manage themselves and their behaviors so they can have a conscious impact on others and they can develop others as well. The Rewiring Workplaces series of webinars, this is about different ways to rewire workplaces, to help workplaces develop in the way that they want to develop, about culture development, in other words. The audience that we expect and invite to these in our community are internal people, so learning and development folks, talent managers, HR people, leaders. External coaches also are very welcome, and we have quite a few external coaches here today. And we, in this series of webinars, we host conversations with experts on topics that we think this community would be interested in. And that's so we can enrich ourselves and all of ourselves. And today I am so pleased with our guest and being able to have a conversation with Kish Modasia. Somehow I had it in my head, Kish, that I was going to say your name incorrectly. Kish Modasia, who I've known for quite a while in the coaching world. Kish has been a coach for 15 years. She offers bespoke coaching and mindfulness courses. She's been a mindfulness coach, I should be more specific, for 15 years. She also works on cultural transformation and enjoys working with multicultural and dispersed teams. And Kish, I think it's important to say, Kish is also a visiting tutor at Henley Business School. Congratulations for that post, Kish. And I would like to welcome you, Kish, and I will turn off the screen share so it's just the two of us. And welcome. What else would you like our people to know about you?
Oh, I think you've covered quite a fair bit, really, Laurie, and it's just lovely to be here with you. And I think you've said I work as a coach. Mindfulness is my kind of little favorite part of it, I guess. And yes, the most recent appointment at Henley Business School has been a wonderful thing to add to my portfolio. So just cross-cultural stuff. Just working with people to become leaders in their lives, in every aspect of their life. So
nice. I'd also like to just welcome everyone who's here, all of our guests. We'd be very happy for you to put your name and where you're calling from in the chat box. And if you'd like to add something about what you want to get out of this webinar, that would be great. There will be a chance to ask Kish some questions later in the webinar. But for about the next half hour, everyone will be on mute except for Kish and myself while we have primary conversation. But feel free to use that chat box and say hello. Anybody wanting to pipe in? I can see a couple of people typing.
Yeah, looks like that.
I think. Great. Welcome, Maria. Laura from Estonia. Great to have you here. Yeah. And we'll just let those comments come in. And again, everyone, please do post questions. We'll be monitoring them. If you have questions, we'll be monitoring them and having a time where we can just do a little Q&A a bit later. But everyone's welcome. So, Kish, what we agreed to talk about in this webinar is it's about managing your internal state. The external state of the world is a bit stressful. There's a lot going on. And I noticed as I was watching the news in the last week, there were a couple of things that I felt were very painful. And I was thinking about us and you and our conversation and thinking, right, I can manage my internal state to absorb the information, but not be devastated by some of the things that are happening. So that's what this conversation is about. Managing stress, we can choose an internal state from which to interact with the world. I think that's a great summary of the work that you do. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about the state of the world, and I know that you, Laurie, are very familiar with the term VUCA.
Yes.
Yeah, and I feel that VUCA was created by I can't remember specifically which armed force of the US, but I think it might have been the Navy.
I'm not sure. It was Navy or Army, one or the other, but it was military.
And so just to remind people who may not know what VUCA stands for, V is for the volatile, U is for the uncertain, C is for the complex, and A is for the ambiguous. And it was because, they were trying to train the army people or the people from that particular force to think about when that is the state of what's going on around you, how do you then operate in that space? And as we know that the VUCA world, I feel it's just never stopped since I've discovered the word. It's just continuously there. And you talked about the news, and we're talking about what's going on here in our country, what's going on in the world, what's going on with climate change, wars. It's just, and if we watch the news, and if that was all what we absorbed, then we would be really unstable, because the impact of it is huge. And so what the research that was done at that time actually found was that when you're operating in a VUCA world, then the thing that you really need to focus on is yourself and what's going on for you. And even the Dalai Lama said that if every 8-year-old was taught meditation, we would eradicate world wars.
I totally believe that. I really do.
And so if we can find the peace within ourselves, then when we're operating from whatever space that we're in, and I like to think that each of us operates as a lighthouse, and that each of us, we could be a small lighthouse or a big lighthouse. It doesn't really matter. The size doesn't matter, but the impact is the same as the lighthouse, in that we can just be who we are, where we are, and you just keep rotating that light.
And shining a light, whether big or small, and just lighting up the
Absolutely.
world. And
yeah, and the most, well, I've done a lot of self-development work, and I believe that it's more than one lifetime's work to keep looking at yourself. And it always starts with us.
Yeah.
And we know that through coaching. I'm sure you can tell us more about that through your neurodiversity stuff as well. But it's like, how can we begin with ourselves? And what I have put together a mindfulness course, and I also do that within organizations and other places. But it's almost like, how can we stop a minute at a time, which comes back to our courage to pause?
Yeah. I think a lot of people, myself included in the past, believe that if we're going to enrich ourselves with a mindfulness approach, that we need to do that a half an hour or an hour at a time. But that's good for us, but it isn't necessarily practical. And a lot of people say, oh, I can't sit still for a half an hour. And
precisely. Yeah, you've touched it completely, and I understand. I've done it, I've been meditating for years, but it's almost like we think something like 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. I mean,
incredible. That's 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day.
Exactly. And when if we're going to be told, well, you've got to stop for 15 to 20 minutes or half an hour, the first reaction in this fast-paced world is, I don't have that time.
Yeah.
And then the second challenge is, or the belief is, that we're supposed to empty our heads in that time.
Right.
That's the first piece of nonsense. There's no way we can empty our heads.
I love how you say that. That's the first piece of nonsense.
It takes, I don't know how long to empty your head, even for seconds and nanoseconds.
Yeah.
Because the thoughts are just going
zooming by. Yeah.
And before you know it, you're sitting in meditation, or you're sitting to be quiet, and the thought comes, oh, I need milk. And before you know it, you're in the shop buying the milk. You're not even in that space sitting. So what I say to people is, well, how about we start with 1 minute at a time? And I equate it to our monetary bank balance. We go to work, we get money in the bank so that we can pay the mortgage, for the shopping, for our holidays, everything that we need. And we always try to make sure that that's at a positive. And what do we do with our emotional bank balance? And usually I get, not a lot.
Not a lot.
Yeah. So if we can start topping up that emotional bank balance by a minute at a time, and I say to people, aim for 5 minutes a day, 5 separate minutes a day. So maybe a minute in the morning, a minute before bed, and then 3 times during the day. And most people, the ones who do my course, all goes, okay, I'll start with a minute. By the second or third week, you find that they are actually averaging 15 to 20 minutes. But it's really about what works for them. How can they stop in their day? So there's things around breathing. We do some work around gratitude. We all know, and I'm sure you can tell us more about the impact of gratitude on the brain and our well-being. And it doesn't take much for us to be grateful. Every time, not every time, but most times when I get onto a train, I will just stop and be grateful for the train driver, the person who cleaned it, my fellow passengers. So it does not need to be anything complex.
Yeah.
The simplicity is where it's at.
Yeah. And all of those things, those individual things, the gratitude, the minute here, the minute there, that all helps us get out of our reactive brain that keeps us driving and makes rash decisions and so on, just to add a little bit of the brain work, and allows us to just tune in. And we can choose.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and choose an attitude and and just calm down, which will help us de-stress. Because that stress, that emotional brain just keeps driving, generating a lot of stress chemicals, adrenaline and cortisol. And that's not good for our bodies. It's not good for our brains. And it keeps us in that fast-paced mode.
Yeah. And as you said, you've got the news, you've got, I live in London, you're going to London. It's a fast pace.
Yeah.
People who are not used to that kind of go, oh my goodness. But us who are used to being in that space, kind of just automatically go with it. So if you can take that little step back, it's interesting to notice the impact that has on you.
So I know that you have are willing to guide us in one of those minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we just do that now?
Sounds
Yeah.
perfect. Sounds
But tell
perfect.
us about it.
Okay, so what I will do is I will put a bell on, and then when that bell goes, I will just talk us through how to be a little bit relaxed and calm for about a minute. It may go on maybe more than a minute, but I don't think much more, maximum 2 minutes. And let's just see how that feels. And for somebody, it may work, others, it may not work. So there's no right or wrong. And so when you're giving us the feedback in the chat, please just let us know what your experience has been, knowing that there is no right and wrong, because anxiety, stress, all of those things have very different forms and they present in different ways. And sometimes it might be that you're feeling, oh my gosh, I've got a twinge in my neck and I haven't noticed that. But it's all information for us to work with. So,
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So as we're hearing the sound of the bell, feel free to close your eyes if you want to, but you don't have to. But what I'd like you to do is just simply focus on your breath as it is. There's no need to change anything at all. We're simply witnessing the breath. And if you can, become aware of your feet on the ground, your body on the chair, and just drop those shoulders just a little bit. And just simply come back to that breath, using it as an anchor to become present. Letting any thoughts simply float away like clouds by coming back to the breath. Taking a moment to just have a quick scan of your body. And still using that breath as an anchor. And then as and when you're ready, with no rush at all, just simply come back into the space of the here and now.
That was so rejuvenating. I'd love to invite others to share your experience of that 1 or so minutes. I don't know how long it was exactly, but felt like a minute-ish.
Yes.
A Kish minute. Peaceful, says Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret.
Very nice.
Thank you, Kathy.
One of the things we get in touch with, isn't it? Our sleepiness.
Our sleepiness, because our body is not used to that little slowness.
Yeah.
And the breath is with us 24/7, so we can use this anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, nice. And I love what Laura says, but
yes, look at that.
In a loud cafe and still managing to get in touch with yourself. Float in a dreamy place. That's lovely. Thanks, Laura.
And what Laura has just shared with us just makes us realize how we could just do this anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, and Felicity had a different experience of the mind wandering and focusing on other things.
As it does.
And Mary saying could have done it for longer.
Yeah.
And going back to what Felicity is saying, about the fact the mind is wandering, when the mind is not used to doing this, I mean, I share that the reason I like to use the bell is because I feel it's a bit like Pavlov's theory of, where the bell goes and the dog starts salivating because he knows the food's going to be ready. The mind actually is so used to being on the go all the time that for it needs back to Laurie's lovely phrase of rewiring. We just need to rewire those kind of pathways, the neural pathways in our brain. They're so used to having anxiety and stress and being on the go all the time. This is a way of actually reminding the brain cells that actually, when I hear the sound, or you don't even need to hear the sound, when I stop and just focus on my breath, something different can happen. But like everything, it needs practice.
Yeah.
And the more you practice, the better it will get.
Yeah.
There you go. Yes, Felicity. So yeah, just know. And the fact that you noticed that your mind was wandering and going back, that again is really an important thing, that you've noticed that. Because until you notice something like that, you can't bring about a change. Most of the time, in our supposedly unconscious state, we are wandering all the time. We're very rarely present.
I think when we have those moments to stop and pause and we notice the mind going like that, and Felicity, I'm sure you're not the only one. And of course that happens to me as well. And Kish, I don't know if you
of course.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like, I think I might be repeating a little bit of what you said, Kish, but it's just helping us see what's going on anyway. All that stuff is going on, and then we stop and pause and go, oh, holy cow, there's all kinds of stuff going on here. It's a peek into, a little window into what is the brain up to? What's our mind up to?
Yeah, and
we don't think we're focusing on something.
Yeah, I say it's an art. It's an awareness of what you hold, and that holding is, that anxiety and that stress or that tiredness that we have. And then, the R is for the realization of what that is doing to you. And so when you become aware, that's when you realize, oh, as Felicity said, the mind is wandering. Somebody else said, I'm feeling a little tired because I'm not used to stopping. Others are feeling peaceful. And then you've got the T is the toolkit of what tools can you use in order to do that rewiring.
Nice.
And as Mary's saying, but I'm with you, Laurie, my mind wanders. There's no way I'm going to say that my mind does not wander. It just takes beyond, like I say, beyond one lifetime, I'm sure, to be present all the time.
Yeah.
But if we can get snippets of it and keep topping up that emotional bank balance, then what happens is when the challenges hit us in these VUCA times, as we know, or we hear something in the news and it really shakes us, or we hear something's happened to a loved one that really challenges us.
Yeah.
Then we can use that breath, or we can use part of that emotional bank balance to meet those challenges with a bit more stability.
Yes.
Rather than, really shaking.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you don't feel that shakiness.
Yeah. But you can feel it without being completely rocked by it, without being taken away by it.
Yeah.
There's still your feet are still on the ground, and you can, so resilience.
I had a spiritual teacher who once said, if you go to the dentist and you have a big abscess and you open your mouth and the dentist looks inside your mouth and faints, it's really no good.
That would be helpful.
Yeah. And so I always remember that really well. It's like, okay, we all know things are going to happen. Life is full of its challenges. None of us are without those. But if we can just stand by with a little bit more stability, then that's what we try to aim for.
Yeah. And with that stability, we can start doing something about it rather than being, at the effect of it.
It's a bit like when there's been an accident and people suddenly react in because they're reacting from a plate of presence, aren't they, when they're in that space?
Yes.
So it's, we can't be like that all the time, but and what I feel is important, Jerry said about leading our lives. It's about looking after ourselves as well in the whole process, because sometimes we can become, what did somebody call it the other day? Compassion fatigue.
Yes.
Which is another thing to just be careful of.
Yeah. Sure.
Because if we just become giving, then we need those boundaries of self-care and all of that in it as well.
Because we can deplete ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you also have that bell set for us for a couple more times, and we'll be pausing again when we hear that bell. So you all can look forward to that, a couple more of those. I'd love to talk about the different ways that people can find these moments, the courage to pause. So there's a minute like you just guided us through, and Kish, you've talked to me before about everyone finding their own way. And there's so many ways, like what works differently for different people. You want to say a little bit more about that?
Yes, I think we all have some ways of dealing with our anxiety and stress, Some people go running, other people might pick up a glass of wine, another person might pick up a cigarette, somebody might, go walking, reading, listening to music, listening to headbanging music. I've had people who've said, yeah, the way I zone out is I put on my ear, or maybe not even put on my earphones, and that's my way of actually having that time. So
it's quite something, isn't it? Wow, headbanging music. Wouldn't be my choice, but I get it.
Not my choice either, but hey, we are all individuals, and who knows, people say swimming, running. Quite a lot of people run for that clarity.
Yeah.
Or that, so I would, really ask people on our call today, and even when they're listening, to say, well, what do I already do? I have a client who came to me with this, on the mindfulness. She tried it twice, actually. The first time she said, oh God, that didn't work for me. I was like, that's what it is like. And then 6 months later, she said, I want to try it again. I said, you sure? She said, yeah, let's try it again. And then she discovered she's a cat sitter.
Okay.
And every time she goes to people's houses to look after the cat, she spends 10 to 15 minutes just stroking the cat. And it suddenly occurred to her that those were her mindfulness moments.
Yeah.
And suddenly her emotional bank balance was topping up at a rate of knots, Yeah. So what is it that you're already doing?
Yeah.
That you want more of, or you want to make less of and do it another way? And and if you don't mind me, I'd love to keep using your word rewiring here, Laurie.
Sure.
Yeah, because it is about rewiring. So it'd be lovely to hear from people, wouldn't it, to see what they...
Anybody want to put in the chat box, what are the things you do naturally to re-ground yourself? Can we say it that way, Kish?
Yeah. Or just, feel more calm or relaxed, or...
Yeah. Recover from the stress of the world.
There you go. Dog walking and swimming.
Sea swimming.
Walking.
Cooking, walking. I think cooking is one of those things for me as well. To consciously prepare a meal. And studying. Oh, that's a great one, Maria.
Yeah. Run, walk, and painting by numbers. Oh, that sounds
all right.
cool. Boxing and pole dancing. Whoa. Thank you, Laura. Yes, I know that it can be an actual sport. Yes. You need quite a lot of flexibility for that one.
Yeah. Oh, you saw an otter family this morning, Jane, did you? Tai Chi.
Lovely.
Nice.
Yes, going out in nature is really a great way, I think, to just being with nature and learning from nature. I love how it accepts everything, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I was learning a while ago about, there's a book called Blue Mind, and they were talking about how we are naturally drawn to blue, like big blue oceans or rivers, big bodies of water, and how that has a natural way of calming us as well. So if you know that, well, swimming in the water would be amazing, but even sitting at the beach or even looking, at a picture of it can be helpful. And that was really surprising to me that that's wired into us, the desire to look, because I love a view of water,
Yes.
and that's actually wired in to calm us. But of course, trees, and there must be a thing about green as well.
Yes.
I don't know about that one. Looking at all, I always picture big trees and that smell that you get in the woods.
And particularly this time of the year where I feel it's, it's autumn where we are, and just watching how the leaves are just, the trees just let go of the leaves, so easily. So, but I also see autumn as a time of harvesting, so it's you're letting go, but it's also harvesting who you are and what you've achieved. So there goes our second bell now.
Second bell.
So again, with the sound of the bell, just simply focus on your breath as it is. Feeling those feet on the ground, the body on the chair, and dropping those shoulders. And also just relaxing the hip area, the pelvic area. And again, just focusing on the breath as it is. Just letting go of any thoughts and float away like clouds by coming back to that breath as an anchor. Using that breath to be present. And then as and when you're ready, just gently coming back to the here and now.
I felt like I was able to sink even more into my chair this time, the second time.
It's like anything, isn't it, Laurie? The more you practice it, the better you get at it.
Others who are here, what did you get the second time? If willing to share. Felt easier to relax this time.
More aware of thoughts rushing in this time, I would say.
Oh, yes. Maria, you're getting in touch with your need for sleep, perhaps. That's an interesting point that she brings up. So if Maria, for those not able to see the chat box, she says she got more sleepy and her mind wandered more. I wonder, Kish, if you have something to say about that. When we are tired, is it harder to have these mindful moments?
Yes, because and also what's happening is that as your body's learning to relax, as we know, when you've been working, and you go on holiday, and then you fall ill on holiday, because the body's finally kind of like, okay, I can relax now.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like that when we're getting a bit more sleepy and the mind is like, what is going on? It's probably, you're the neuroscientist, I'm not, but it's literally like, I feel it's like there's a little bit of a, there's a conflict with the mind because it's not used to that relaxation.
Mm.
And so it's like, oh, what's going on here? So it's trying to, maybe compensate, I think. But I could be wrong. I am no expert on it. But it's just, I think what I feel from my experience of doing this work is just work with the awareness.
Right.
And just notice that awareness. And just, if you can, just, the quote I for mindfulness is being in the present moment, accepting what is without judgment.
Yeah.
So it's about just accepting the information that you're getting and saying, right, okay, this is what it is. And then we have a choice. We either just let it go, or, if it's something like I've had quite often where people will say, I've just noticed a headache coming on. Then maybe that's saying, okay, maybe you need to do something about that.
Yeah.
So, know and don't, and always trust yourselves. I think we are our own self-critics. We're the worst critics of ourselves. So really trust yourself and see what that information is telling you.
Yeah.
And trust yourself to decide that you will make the right decision for yourself.
Yeah.
I say that saying I also have my self-doubt, so don't think I'm an expert on it, but
yeah. But I think that part is, that's a big part of mindfulness, isn't it? Of the non-judgment. Just like, oh, I notice this thought, I notice the sleepiness, I notice my body hurts, a headache coming on. That's just noticing rather than, oh, I have to do something about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where I like to align it with nature, because that's what nature does. It doesn't go, oh my gosh, there's a storm coming now, what shall I do? Or a flower's being trampled under our feet when we walk on the grass, and it just kind of sprouts back again as and when, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot to learn from nature in that aspect.
Amazing. So if we can expand on that whole idea of mindfulness is a way to just be present and notice and not judge. It kind of leads us to that whole ability to create an inner state from which we interact with the world. Imagine we can really get to that state of calm and groundedness, and then interact with the world, read the news, hear what other people have to say, and manage to stay in that equilibrium, rather than, oh my, what's the world coming to? It would be a totally different experience. And I think that's really what you're after. That's kind of what we're after in our work as well, is how do you use the different parts of the brain that are more grounded and interact from there, lead from there, be a teammate from there. But please tell us more about that from your view.
Yeah, so it's a bit like I said at the beginning, that we are these little lighthouses, and that if each of us can just get our light shining as much as possible, so really be more peaceful within ourselves. So at the end of the day, the work is with ourselves.
Yeah.
So the more that we can be peaceful within ourselves, the more we can practice these minutes at a time. And as we spoke earlier, it can be done in so many ways. I've talked about gratitude. I've talked about the breath. We've had this lovely sharing of people going for a walk and painting by numbers, Laura's lovely pole dancing and boxing. And there's so many ways that we can bring that to ourselves. And the self-care aspect is really key here as well, because I speak from my own experience. I come from an Indian upbringing, and in Indian culture, women really do everything. You do it you've got to really be that giving. And I put my hand up and say, thank God for coaching, because before coaching, Laurie, I was that martyr, the one who did everything for everybody and then screamed the house down because I was the only one who was doing everything. And it's through coaching that I've really learned the importance of my own value and how important my self-care and boundaries are. And that is what has really, together with the mindfulness, really taught me that if I want to be of some kind of impact for myself, first of all, and those around me, then it's because I am really taking care of myself. And I really have made a huge shift on that front. So it's almost like the mindfulness practice is important. I walk, I row, I love out in nature. All of those things of self-care are important. And I think in this busy world, especially since COVID, where people are working from home a lot, where the boundaries of what hours are work, what hours are home are not there, the boundaries may not be there at home. We really need to put those boundaries in place clearly. And so that time of being quiet or doing what nourishes you is really important. So that when you look out, and I always say, even if you're sitting here, I always say, just look out of the window. If you can't get out, just look out of the window or walk to a window that you can get and look at. And even if it's a tree on the roadside, just spend a few moments looking at that tree and getting your moments in, because then when you're more stable, it does have an impact on the rest of the world. If all of us were far more peaceful, we probably wouldn't have this crazy conflict or the ego power that we have around us. We're very fortunate, you and I, and I'm sure people who are on this call as well, when we're in that coaching environment, that it's not that egocentric stuff is not there. It's a more collaborative, inclusive one. And whereas if we in ourselves are happy and calm and comfortable, then that's what we're giving out to anyone who's coming into our path, whether it's a stranger on the street or somebody that we're working with, and we can have that impact on the macro level if we all could work in that way.
Yeah. I'm curious if I may ask about some of the work that you do with leaders. I do believe you do some work with leaders in culture development, transformation. Seems like a natural segue from what you've just said. And do you want to say a little bit about how you bring mindfulness to organizations or to leaders?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, obviously, during COVID, I ended up doing quite a lot of work in organizations just on Zoom or Teams. And, it was literally, I think I was really surprised at how many professions had just overworked and no boundaries. The law profession was one that really surprised me. And I think over COVID, I think the other thing was naturally people were so insecure. I think all of us were insecure. We were really in a VUCA world, weren't we? We were just like, we did not know what was going to be happening. And so what happened there is people, because they were worried about losing their jobs, all of that, it was, I think that the stress was at another level. Not only were you worried about whether I'm going to get COVID or not, and everybody was losing loved ones around them. There were the restrictions. And then on top of it, it was like, okay, the government said everyone can, or whoever can work from home, but there was no boundaries put around that. And so working with people really was around boundaries, especially at that time. And getting people to say no, or say, these are my working hours. Or unfortunately, because we have the technology, people are answering emails at all different times of the day. They're on holiday and they're still working. So a lot of the work was around that. And I think the other thing was also around leadership, and that each of us are leaders in our own right, and we've all got our own leadership style. And this morning I was working with a client who, she was explaining to me, I am a compassionate, forgiving, kind leader, but I need to bring the boundary side in, because I'm not always great at putting the boundaries in place. So when you're talking about, it's that kind of stuff that is in organizations. it's always that boundary work, that learning to say no, that learning to, I think the self-care is probably our worst illness of modern times.
Yes, I agree. And the teams and people I've been working with, I totally agree with you. It seems to be escalating really out of control, the amount of VUCA. So, the uncertainty, the amount of meetings somebody is expected to attend in a day has at least doubled, if not quadrupled, from what it was 4 years ago, because we can.
There's no gaps between the meetings, are there? Especially if they're online.
There's no gaps.
There's no gap whatsoever.
Yeah, no time to walk down the corridor and have a breath, even, like in an office setting, you wouldn't expect someone to be there, instantaneously transporting oneself from one meeting to the next. And yeah, I think it's just super stressful. And a lot of that happened from COVID, and we haven't gone back.
No. And I don't think that, I feel there's the individuals in the organization, and that's what we work with, saying to people, make the change within as an individual. Bell's coming in, so we'll do that and continue this conversation after that.
Yes.
So just as we listening to the sound of the bell, again, just focusing on the breath as it is. Simply witnessing that breath. Awareness of the feet on the ground, the body on the chair, and just dropping those shoulders and relaxing as much of the body as you can. Still using that breath as an anchor. This time I'm going to ask you to take a nice deep breath in, as deep as you can, right into your stomach, into your belly, and hold it for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just let it go gently, 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 gently. And then coming back to the breath as it is. Now we take another nice deep breath in, and this time as we're breathing in love, compassion, and kindness for ourselves. And hold that for 4. And in the holding, just imagine that love, compassion, and kindness spreading to every cell in our body. And on the exhale, just letting go of anything that no longer serves us. And then just coming back to the breath as it is. And as and when you're ready, just coming back into the space.
I think that was really good timing, because as I noticed, first thing, as soon as the bell went off, we've been talking about the spinning up in the organization and the fast pace, and I could feel that I had gotten caught up in that. We talk about the fast pace, and then and we have the bell, and it's like, okay, we actually don't have to be in the fast pace to talk about the fast pace.
Yes, it's uncanny sometimes how that bell works, actually.
Yeah. And when that brings to mind something else about the brain, neuroscientists, I believe, still don't understand the mechanism, but emotions are contagious. We can sit with people who are stressed and feel more stressed. We can sit with people who are angry and feel more angry. It's just a natural thing. As if some of us suggested some kind of low-level smell. Like imagine that we smell stress, and it sort of pervades our system. And we can get that contagiousness also from thinking about things. And even if we imagine people we're sitting with, if we imagine sitting with angry people, we can also start feeling that. So I think there's something about noticing what we expose ourselves to. Or, just being more aware of what we expose ourselves to and continuing to ground ourselves. So that exposure, like we talked about in the beginning, that's exposure to something isn't, ruining our day.
Yes. And I love the way you described your shift from, where we were in this fast-paced world, and we were talking about how the bell kind of got us into a different space, didn't it?
Yes. It's quite, it feels magical. I know it's practical. It is
and yet it's so
thing.
simple. Yet it's so simple.
Simple. Even so simple.
And it goes back to that, all it takes is the courage to pause.
Yes, absolutely. So I notice already it's 10 minutes to the top of the hour. And just curious if anybody in the group who's here wants to say something. We've got about 5 minutes for a little Q&A. If anybody has anything to say, maybe you put your hand up, digital hand up, or just come off mute. I think Froda's opening that so you can come off mute. There's Mary. So there we go. Mary, what would you like to say or ask? Hi, Mary. Good to see you.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. So I find, and I just wonder, I'm not really quite sure how to phrase the question, but I do a lot of walking and going out in the countryside and gardening and lots of things, painting but I find that if I actually sit and focus on my breath as a direct practice, I find that better, because when I'm walking outside, for example, in a way my mind wanders more because there's more stimulation out there. Does that make any sense, or should I don't know whether sometimes I worry that if I'm doing a walk, it's not the same as just sitting and focusing on my breath. I don't know if you have any comment on that.
I just, Laurie, shall I take that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. And I would say that, again, just witness, sort of just notice what's coming up for you. And explore what works. And it may be that you could actually still go into nature and have your walk, but you could maybe just sit for a minute or two, play with it, combine it, and see what works best for you. Because you've already noticed, it sounds like, all of those things, gardening, walking, all of them. With gardening, you're very much with, it's also physical, isn't it?
Yes.
So you're very present. So you're probably there, the mind would wander less, but really just become more and more aware of what's working for you. And keep just noticing that, and maybe noting it or something, but just work with yourself and notice what works for you, Mary.
Yeah, as a practice, just sitting and focusing on the breath is, for me, is a better thing. The others are more relaxing, if you like. They are relaxing, but in a
different way.
Everybody else finds this, yes, in a different way, yes, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Mary. Anybody else? The question or comments? Maria. Hi, Maria.
Hi. I was curious, before Kish, you mentioned the term, I think you used compassion fatigue. And in my head, I have that brain actually rewards us when we practice compassion. And I was wondering if you can say more about that. Where is maybe those?
Yeah, when I talk about compassion fatigue, it's when we're wanting to do something for people all the time. It's a bit like rescuing, and we talk about rescuing within the coaching or the field of where where somebody really needs our help, and so we're always helping other people, but we're not looking after ourselves. And also it's come from conditioning as well, because we've always been taught to look after everybody else before we look after ourselves. I can certainly from my upbringing know that. And so I was very much of that. I would always look after everybody else. And then I would find I haven't eaten properly. Forget anything else. But even in terms of just my physical needs, I was not looking after myself. And I realized that was of no good to me or to anybody else, because what happened eventually was, although I'd taken care of everybody beautifully, I was resenting them afterwards, which is not how we're wanting to be doing things. So that's what I mean by compassion fatigue, that we're just so busy helping other people that we're not looking after ourselves.
We wear ourselves out that way.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Maria. So, Kish, you have some programs that you offer, and Frode, I believe, has the PDF, and he's going to put that in the chat box for everyone to access. In our work, we encourage mindfulness. We have a little mindfulness ABC, to be aware and breathe, and then you can choose your way forward. We try to build everything else on top of that. But it's a small part of our program, and we encourage people to investigate mindfulness and other programs. And so I just really want to highlight Kish's program or programs. I think you have several that you offer. That's true.
Yeah, there's mainly one, but yeah, I do different ones for organizations and things. Yes, it's got to be bespoke for some places.
Okay, so just want to really highlight, it's worthwhile for all of us to learn to lead our lives with more consciousness and more mindfulness. And so please do invest and check out Kish's program. And we will be sending that to others who have signed up for this webinar, and Watch It will be sending that out to them as well tomorrow, I believe. So hopefully we'll have a few more people investigating and investing in their own self-care and becoming more of a leader in their own lives. And the other thing I want to say, just on behalf of Shook Svensson, first of all, thank you, Kish, for being here.
Thank you for asking. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and for those of you who are here or listening to this, our program Rewired to Relate is our foundation program. I think you have a link to that as well if you're interested in that. We don't offer that again until the spring or February. But those of you who are interested in providing leadership development for your clients, if you're a coach or even an internal facilitator, we do certify people to deliver a program that helps them. It's not just mindfulness, it's a tiny bit is mindfulness, but to build on that, to develop others from that place, to be a great team player from a mindful place. If you're interested in being a facilitator, just want to talk about that, you can just contact me and we'll have a conversation. So, Kish, yes, thank you. And anything else you'd like to say to our audience? And
I'd just like to say that thank you for coming and thank you for joining, and just start with your minute at a time. Just takes a minute, honestly.
Find the courage to take that moment.
Yeah, find your courage to pause for a minute.
Yeah.
Make it an important part of your day.
Really powerful experiences you brought to us today, Kish. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurie.
All right. We'll close for now. Thank you, everyone. Be in touch. And we will see you soon. Next month, our conversation, by the way, let me just put this in at the last moment. Our Rewiring Workplaces conversation next month is going to be about the masculine and feminine faces of leadership and how to integrate those and what do those terms mean in today's world. And we'll have a couple of experts, one who's an expert in working with women in feminine leadership and one who's working with men, and redefining masculinity and how that applies to leadership. So look for some messages about that. That'll be in a month's time. All right. Now, thanks, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.